Hi everyone, my name is LORIE and I am a member of Cornerstone Tabernacle along with my two daughters, Angela and Veronica, and my four grandchildren. So I'm here today because I wanted to give you guys my testimony. I had some recent medical events and I got a miracle. So I guess the best thing we could do is just jump right into it, and we're going to start from the very beginning. So I was born on May 16th, 1971. My mother said it was a beautiful Sunday. I'm just kidding. We're not going back that far. We're actually going to start with June the 9th of 2023. So June the 9th, I had some issues. So we had scheduled a total hysterectomy robotically, and there is a 6-week recovery. I took a couple of weeks off before then, so I was actually out of work for about 8 weeks. And that happened on June 9th. And July 21st, I got a full release to go back to work. I was so excited, couldn't wait to get back. So I started back on Sunday, July 23rd, and I worked my 8-hour shift on Sunday, and by the time I got home, it just felt like my muscles were a bit sore, and I'm like, well, I haven't worked in 8 weeks, so being on my feet for 8 hours straight, I just had to jump back into it. And just work out those sore muscles. So, I was doing the icy hot and things of that nature. And on Monday, I was actually scheduled off. So, but Monday when I got up, it was like more muscles were hurting. So I'm taking Tylenol and Advil and alternating between the two and lathering up with the icy hot. And then on Tuesday morning, I got up and it was a little bit better than Monday, and I'm like, okay, well, it's loosening up and we're working it out. And I was scheduled to work 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. So I made it to work, made it through that shift, and went home, just took some Tylenol and went straight to bed. And then Wednesday morning, I was actually scheduled to work from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. I was hurting pretty bad come Wednesday morning, and just... to me, it seemed different than just normal muscle aches that you hadn't used in a while, but still didn't really think much about it and went on to work. Ended up sitting down and just finishing up a little bit of computer work that I didn't get done on Tuesday night. And my store leader and one of my assistant store leaders came up and, were talking to me. And of course, I was emotional because it's just like the more the minutes passed, the worse the pain got. And on Wednesday, I think I lasted about an hour and 15 minutes. And then I was like, I'm hurting really bad, even with just sitting, because that's all I did for the hour and 15 minutes. So I'm like, I really need to go home and call and make a doctor's appointment. So I went ahead and left, called and made an appointment on Thursday morning with my primary doctor. I went in, told him about the aches and how bad it was. And even Monday, it was hurting so bad, my husband actually had to help me to the bed to go to bed. And my doctor thought it was just residual from the surgery. And I'm like, Doc, I'm not real sure. So he gave me a steroid pack, but he did do some blood work. And he's like, we'll get with you whenever the blood work comes back. Just get these steroid packs, start it today, and just take it. I think it was like maybe 13 days worth or something. So I did that on Thursday, and Friday, my husband works the weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 12-hour shifts. So he had to go to work. So, excuse me, that left me at home, by myself. And the pain just got so bad. So my two daughters, Angela and Veronica, decided to come and stay with me and spend the night, brought the 4 grandkids. So they had actually... ordered in some dinner, and I really couldn't eat much, and I was like, guys, I just want to go and lay down. And by this point, I was hurting so bad they had to kind of help me to the bedroom and into the bed, and I asked them just to check in on me like every hour. So they were doing that, and I guess it was around 9 p.m. I was still laying there, but wasn't asleep. They kind of peeked through the door, and I'm like, girls, I think I need to get up. So I went to get up, and I could not walk. I literally could not walk. So the minute that I realized that, I just looked at them, and I'm like, you guys have to take me to the emergency room. It's like I can't walk. I don't know what's going on. So they managed to get me into the kitchen and sat me down in a chair at the kitchen table. And Angela, my daughter, was going to stay at my house with the grandkids, and Veronica was going to give me a ride to the hospital. So they're getting up all my medications, and I glanced down on my phone and saw that I had a missed call at about 8:34 from a private number. And I'm like, well, I don't know anyone with a private number. And then glanced at the top of my phone and saw that I had a voicemail. So I listened to the voicemail on speakerphone, and my daughters heard it. And it was actually, so this was Friday night at between 9 and 9:30. So they listened to it as well, and it was actually my primary doctor. He was at home, but he got my results from the blood work and said that my potassium was at a 1.5, and that I was critical and needed to either call an ambulance or get to the emergency room. So we were already headed to the emergency room, but now at least I was armed with information to tell them when I got there, so they knew where to start at. So we got to the emergency room, and they got me in and triaged and, took the first round of blood really quickly. They got me back, not as quickly, but they got me back into a room in the ER, and they ended up putting an IV in both arms. In one, they were pushing straight potassium, and then in the other one, they were pushing saline with potassium in it. So, I've got that going on. But one thing I learned about the potassium is when it goes in through the IV at, full speed, it burns. And it burns so bad that it literally felt like my whole hand was on fire and my skin was falling off. So, I'm just like, it's burning so bad. So they did slow it down, but we needed to get the potassium in me. So, here and there, I would let them speed it back up, take that pain as long as I could, and then they would back off. They did say they were going to admit me. So my daughters, had called my husband, who was getting off work at 9 o'clock, and told him to come on to the hospital. So he got there a little bit after 10 before I actually got a room in the emergency room. And they said they were going to have to admit me, but it would be a little while before they had a room available. So it was either 2:30 or 4:30 a.m. on Saturday before I actually got a room upstairs. So they did get me a room upstairs, and they were taking the blood and doing the numbers and really, really pushing the potassium as I could stand it. And at first it was only going up by like 0.1. And then finally, after hours, it started going up by 0.2. This was all Saturday and Saturday night. And Sunday at, I could tell you the exact time, 4:09 p.m. Because I had put a post on my Facebook page about what had happened, where I was, that I was feeling better. They had gotten my potassium up to 2.5. So I was ecstatic about that. I was playing on my phone. They had brought me coloring books with coloring pencils, so I was doing that. Just feeling really, really good. And I'm like, okay, so 3.5 for your potassium is normal. The range is 3.5 to 5.1. And I was really close, so I was optimistic. Tomorrow I'm going home. So I told my husband, I said, you go ahead and go home, get yourself a good night's sleep, come back in the morning. At midnight, Sunday night, everything changed. All I know is something happened with my hands, and my fingers went in very unnatural positions, and my hands actually locked up. And they locked up so tight that this part of my palm was actually touching this side. So if you just tried to do that, you see how much space is left here. It was touching. And somehow my fingers were all tangled in that, and this thumb was here, and my hands were so tightly locked that this nail was literally touching my bone. And that was on both hands. So I didn't know what had happened, and I just started screaming out in pain. And then the poor little nurse come in, and he's like, you know, what is it? And I was in so much pain. All I could really get out was one word at a time. And all I could do was just put up my hands and show him and say locked, and then some time would pass and say hurt, because the pain was so intense. The best way I could describe that pain was you could take the most horrible word in the dictionary in every single language spoken across the world, and that would not do justice to the pain that I was in. From my hands being locked up the way that they were. So he didn't understand, and he didn't know what was going on. So I was over in the chair by the window, and he was over with his computer by the door. And, you know, I'm just screaming in help, you know, in pain, and asked him for help. And he's like, I'm talking to the doctor. We're trying to figure it out. And then the doctor came down, and she talked to the nurse for a minute, and then she just kind of like hastily rushed over at me. And she's like, what is it? And all I could do, because the pain was so intense, was just hold up my hands and just say locked and then pain, because that's all I could get out. And then she actually forcefully like grabbed my right hand and was doing that, and then acting like she was, you know, trying to move my thumb. And I'm thinking in my mind, because I couldn't get my words out, you know, you're not going to be able to move it. It's locked. So all I could tell her too was locked and then hurt. And then she left me and went over and said something to the nurse, and he kind of rushed out, and she stood in the doorway, and then he came back in. And I'm not really sure when he came back in if he gave me medication or really what happened, because the pain was just so intense. But I was able, because I was sitting in the chair and had the little table in front of me and my phone was there, I was able to maneuver my phone with my knuckles and actually push the button to be able to swipe it. And I redialed my husband. And all I could say was come, because that's all I could get out. And crying in pain. So he got there as quick as he could. And, you know, even to him, all I could do was show him my hands and say locked and hurt. And then the next thing I remember, I think I was still in the chair when he got there, but then I ended up in the bed, and it was a day and a half that I lay in that pain. And, you know, I just kept saying locked and hurt, and then Jesus helped me. That's really all I could get out, because I wanted them to know what was happening and that it hurt. And then I was calling on Jesus to help me. So in the bed, then Veronica ended up coming. So I had, you know, my husband and my youngest daughter there, who had to witness this horrific event. So I just started looking up at the ceiling, and it was the drop down tile. So they have, you know, like the little metal rail that they drop into. And I started concentrating on where the four corners met, and all I could see was a cross. And at one point, I remember when I was crying out in pain, it was like I was speaking in tongues or something. It wasn't the English language or any language that I know of, but I vaguely remember that. And I've never spoken in tongues before. And so I just fixated on that, what I thought was a cross. And then Jesus was there with me. And I just told him that I was done. I had no more strength. I couldn't fight anymore. And I just asked him to take me home. And in that moment that I asked God just to take, or Jesus just to take me home, the pain subsided. I was not in any pain. And the place where I was, it's like I wasn't in the hospital room. It's like I was in a different place, a different realm. And the best way I can describe it is it was a space between here and heaven. And when that pain stopped, I honestly thought that I had died and Jesus was taking me to heaven. That's what I thought. I eventually woke up. I don't remember waking up because it took a while for me to remember at what point I was awake and actually lucid and more aware of my surroundings. So I don't know what that time frame was. But I do remember Veronica being there with me, and when I woke up and I became more aware of my surroundings, I noticed that my whole body had swollen from the top of my scalp to the tip of my toes, and my arms from the tip of my fingers to my shoulders was, when I looked down, like 4 times the size with all the fluid. I mean, there was fluid everywhere. It was in my abdomen, it was in my back, it was in my thighs, my legs, it was my whole body. And I'm still not sure what caused that, but I do remember my hands, my whole hands and all my fingers, they were no longer locked, but they were completely numb and tingly, like when your hand goes to sleep. And I couldn't use them. I mean, they were good for nothing. So, I couldn't even go to the restroom by myself. And when I remember trying to, I had to use the restroom. Veronica was with me that night, and I couldn't make it to the restroom. So she actually brought over the porta potty. I know this is gross, but it's part of the story. As close to the bed as she could get it, so that she could just help me stand up and turn around. And I don't remember any of this because this was when I was still not aware of my surroundings and what was happening. But she said she laid her hands on my back and she prayed for me. And she said as soon as she got done praying that I said I felt better. And I don't remember any of that. But what had happened was at around midnight Sunday night, what they found out happened was my body was depleted of vitamin D, and it was depleted of calcium. And when that happens, it will seize up your muscles. It can actually seize up your whole body, every muscle in your body, and your heart is a muscle. And it did not seize up. So that's what caused the cramping and my hands locking up, was that. When the doctor came in, I believe it was on Tuesday, he had told my husband and myself, because we were the only two in the room, that, I was a special case and that I was a miracle. Because they had never seen anyone actually live through that. That in all the other cases that they had seen where someone was depleted of all vitamin D and all calcium, that their heart did seize. It stopped. And he said, when your heart seizes and stops, and it's for that reason, it's locked up, there's no way they could revive you. So he told me and my husband that I should have died on Monday, July 31st. But God was there and he gave me my miracle. I had never really, I guess, in a sense, felt like I had actually heard from God. I'm a baby Christian, I guess, this is what they call it. I'm still learning, asking a lot of questions. I was trying to, prior to this, was, trying to make getting to know God and having a personal relationship with him a priority. It just really didn't happen yet. And going to church was a bit sporadic. And there were times I blamed my job when I probably could have worked it so I could have come. It just would have meant a long day. Church and then straight to work, which is right down the road from the church, and then getting home really late. But God gave me a miracle that day, and I just want to let everyone out there that's hearing this know. It might sound cliche, but heaven is real. And Jesus was there with me. And prior to that, I had never felt like I had heard from God. And I was thinking maybe I was not strong enough in my faith for him to give me that. But I guess that didn't matter to him because he came to me. And I know he was there in that space between that room and heaven. And instead of taking me home, he decided to send me back. And I believe with all of my heart that my calling and what he sent me back to do was to tell everyone my testimony, and that he is there and that he is real. And if you are not saved and you have not asked him to forgive you, and if you are not trying to put him first in your life and having a personal relationship with him, you need to do that. Because if you have doubt and you die and you've not been saved and you're cast into the pits of hell, you will know then, and it will be too late. So just know that I will tell my story to everyone, and I have since I come home from the hospital. Everyone I have talked to and told about my experience, I never left that part out. They can think I'm crazy. They can think I've lost my mind. I know it was real. It wasn't a figment of my imagination. It wasn't wishful thinking. He was there. So that is my testimony. And my calling is to tell everyone about my testimony, and that's what I'm going to be. And my prayer for you is, if you don't know Jesus, please find a church. Please find a Bible. Please get to know him. Because that peace I felt in that moment is the peace I'll know for eternity when I get to heaven. Because I know that's where I'm going. I want to bless you all and thank you all so much for taking the time to listen to my testimony. God bless you all.